TheDuckChris, and I'm back today to talk about Raids 3 rewards, part 2. So today there was a Q&A to discuss Raids 3 rewards, and there's also an updated blog put out this week to discuss feedback and some changes. So I'll go over both what they said in the Q&A and the blog. But let's just start with the Heka, which is the new charged wand. I've seen a lot of discussion online and also on the Q&A today. They talked about it, about how the Heka is underwhelming in terms of raw DPS, but that's why they focused on the utility. But I want to dispel this notion because it's time for our friend the DPS calc. So this is just a basic setup with the Heka versus current best in slot, the harm at Kraken. So Kraken's a very kind of standard place to mage. It has some defense, but not a ton. And this is just one example of where how much better the Heka is going to be. So the Heka versus the harm is 6.5% better. It's not a ton, but it's very significant. For example, here's Great Olm melee hand, and it's the Scythe versus the Lance, and it's only slightly better, slightly more than 7%. So if you think about the Scythe and the Lance, like the Scythe is obviously quite a bit better than the Lance. And, you know, that's a big difference in price, a big difference in, you know, how much damage you're doing. And that's what we can see with the Heka versus the harm. And the harm already is an item that is like pretty expensive right now, despite being farmed to oblivion by bots. And you're going to have 6.5% more DPS. And that's just the base. So that's like step one, nothing else going on. You have 6.5% more DPS, and it's more Iron Man friendly because you don't have to use Tome of Fire charges. Instead, you get to use the ward. So that's just a start. Step two is when you have the Arceus Spellbook on, because the last hit of the Arceus Spellbook with the Heka, it lowers defense. So basically, where was it? Here we go. Drains up to 20% of your NPC's magic level. You know what? Warhammer drains 30% of your defense. And so 20% is pretty good. And it also boosts your magic level by up to 50% of the drain magic level, capped at 15%. So basically it's better than an imbued heart, and it also drains defense. It's lost after a period of time, but basically you're going to continue to be doing these attacks, so you'll be able to maintain your boost if you're on the Arceus Spellbook. And of course, you're also adding thralls. So on the Arceus Spellbook, you add max hits for the heart bonus, or the boost bonus here with the 15% magic level. If you want to look at exactly how much that is, there's a calculation here somewhere for the... Yeah, so if heart is plus 10 magic levels, and this is plus 15, so you'll add maybe one max hit here and there on the slow attack, or on the fast attacks, and 2 to 3 max hits on the big attack. That's pretty significant. And with the lower defense, that's going to be a good amount of damage, especially with thralls. In raids, you know, the boost is not going to be as significant, but if we look at raids with the Sang Staff, because that's what you're using there most of the time, and you have the overloads. So Heka with the overloads is 17.5% more than Sang. That is insane. That is so much damage. And the fact that most of your attacks are a 2-tick means that you're going to have a lot less overkill, meaning, you know, you have a lot less ticks where you're just waiting around and doing nothing. So obviously we'll have to see how this works in terms of solo raids with the running pattern. I'm sure someone will work out some kind of pattern where you use the Heka on this attack in this spot and you're able to get as much DPS out of it as possible. But just in terms of raw damage on Olm, on the mage hand, the Heka is so much better than the Sang. And this is, again, just on standard spellbook. So if you add thralls, that's more. But, you know, maybe you don't want to use thralls because you don't get the boost in terms of the the offensive boost, although you are lowering the defense of the hand, which again is going to raise your DPS. So yeah, the Heka's really good, guys. It's going to be really strong. And the idea that the utility is where the focus is, like, yeah, the utility is going to be good. It's going to be interesting, and it's going to bring a new dynamic to whatever we're trying to do with this weapon, and different metas and strategies that we can use. But the raw DPS is good enough. It's really strong. And I think that we're going to see that when it comes in game. So part 2, let's talk about the ward. The ward, there's not a lot of changes, but the main discussion was about the availability and usability of the uncharged version. So people wanted the uncharged version to be strong so that the ward itself was worth a lot of money. Obviously, I had talked about previously how this is mainly a drop rate problem, and if you make the ward rare enough, then it's not going to be like the Pegasian Crystal, because it's not going to come into the game nearly as often as the Pegasian Crystal. But they did discuss on the Q&A, they want to add the full 5% damage boost to the uncharged version. But they were going to lower the offensive bonus, that is the accuracy bonus. So instead of having this be 10, it would be 5, and then you would have 5 magic damage there. So compared to the charged version, you're adding 20 magic bonus and defenses, which is basically the Arcane Spirit Shield. So you're basically adding the Arcane Spirit Shield to an existing item that gives 5% damage. Flavor-wise, that kind of makes sense that you're adding an Arcane Sigil. But I think it's interesting to have the uncharged version still have 5% damage. I feel like you could easily drop that to like 2% damage, or even, 2.5%, something that is still a significant amount, but you really want to add that sigil on for the full bonus. Otherwise, there's not really that much of a point to use the Spirit Shield, because as we've seen, there's a lot of metas where the Arcane even isn't that useful right now, because accuracy isn't a huge draw when you have compared it to other things like thralls, or just inventory space, for example. So maybe 2.5% or 2% or something would make it so that you really want to add that sigil to get the full bonus, and not make it just accuracy based. The Osmumten's Fang, they didn't talk about it too much on the Q&A, but there is some notes here. Players feel underwhelmed by the rework of the Fang compared to more significant changes made to other rewards. I agree with this. Basically, I said that the Fang is still bad, but I've kind of turned around on it a little bit. First off, they added 25 more accuracy, but most of this is just an explanation. 25 more accuracy is fine, and the more important part, what they've said, is that it's going to be a great weapon specifically for this raid. They're going to be adding more high defense NPCs. When we do, the Fang will really come into its own. That's fine. That's really all I needed you to tell me. If you gave me an item that is not supposed to be one of the premier items, it's just kind of a side upgrade. Obviously, the premier item is the wand and the shield, and this is kind of one of the other rewards. It's going to be good in the raid. That's all you have to tell me. It's something that's going to be useful. It's something that once I get it, I'm going to be like, yes, thank God, like, this part of the raid that is so annoying, like, it's going to become easier now that I have the Fang. Like, I definitely want that. They're also going to change the special attack down to 25%. That's fine. We don't have a lot of good specs that are 25% these days, so that's definitely interesting. And it's something that, especially combined with the spec ring, like, should be interesting. The potion, let's talk about the potion. Players feel like the stat renewal potion is too niche to be useful. I think the potion, is kind of getting people riled up just because they mentioned overloads. And, I've discussed previously how there are a bunch of different ways for overloads to come into the game, but we don't need overloads right now. Every content in the game is doable without overloads, and doable pretty comfortably. I don't think there's any super struggle metas where people are like, yeah, this really sucks without overloads. And if we compare it more to, let's say, the Bastion potion, which is one of the potion rewards from Theater of Blood Raids 2. The Bastion potion was not supposed to be a completely new meta that completely revolutionizes how we use potions and increases the DPS of PVM, blah, blah, blah. No, it's just a niche reward. It's not meant to be a main reward. It's an option that players can use rather than a completely new meta. And it's an option that can find use in a variety of scenarios that we're not entirely sure about yet. Maybe it's useful in the raid. Maybe it's useful at Nex, letting you save a couple restores. Maybe it's useful in places where your stats are drained, but you don't necessarily need to be potted up, like skilling or something like that. I feel like there's going to be uses for it, and the fact that it's not insanely powerful right off the bat doesn't mean that it won't be a good addition to the game. And the last thing in these changes are talking about the Pharaoh's Scepter. It's an interesting way to add the teleport in coming with an existing item. I think I didn't really expect it. And another thing that I didn't expect is this change that they're talking about here, where they're going to increase the amount of teleports up to 100 with the Elite Diary completion. I think that's awesome. It's always been a very strange item that carries 8 charges, but is chargeable with items that you have to go farm or buy, and then you have to teleport to the pyramid to recharge it rather than just use the items on them, like something like the Xeric's Talisman. It's a lot more streamlined. And there's always been problems with bank placeholders as well. Like if it uncharges, it uses a different bank placeholder, and I'm not sure if it's still the case, but for a while, like the higher charge versions didn't work with the bank placeholders because of the diary, and it kind of looked at it as a different item or something. Anyway, it was just a mess, and I am really a fan of this change because you're definitely going to be able to charge it, to use it a lot more easily, and it keeps Pyramid Plunder as relevant content to go do instead of just auto-clicking knights. So yeah, that should be cool. That's about it for the changes so far. They haven't said really anything about release date. They haven't said about when it's going to be pulled, but I like the changes. I think it looks good, and basically the only thing that I would really say I want changed again would be maybe that adjustment to the damage bonus on the uncharged shield. I think these rewards are really good. I'm definitely going to be voting yes on everything, and I think you should too. That's about it for this blog. Quick shout out to the mods for the work on the Android beta mobile client today, which they also demoed on the Q&A, which is very interesting. If I ever leave my house again, I will definitely check that out. And until then, leave a like, subscribe, and peace.